Hello and welcome. Welcome back to another Onkruid video. Welcome back to another unedited Soulstone Survivors video. Back to the Dungeon of Despair we go. We need to gather some more tin. And that's all there is to it really. That's all that I had planned for this episode. That's my game plan. Just knew that I had to collect some tin. No idea what I was gonna play. No idea in what difficulty. But here we are. Here we are with the Pyromancer and the upgraded weapon. The new weapon, Chaotic Inferno. An ability that I really enjoyed playing with the first time I unlocked this weapon, which was a couple of episodes ago, so I wanted to give it another shot with 10 runic power this time, which means that we picked Recklessness, more damage for every point of health we are missing. Not necessarily every point of health, but I think every percentage of health probably. I think that's a bit more accurate because every point of health, then again, every point of health is kind of a percentage of health, if you will. For now it is gonna be a bit less than 1%. 1 point of health, yeah, I think that's correct. If you would have exactly 100 HP points, it would be exactly 1%, but that's not the case. We're a bit over 100, 135, so I guess it's 1.35% really. That's not true. How do we calculate this? If 1 is 100th of 100, then 1.35 is 1%. So 1 health point is a bit less. I have no desire to really calculate it. I'm not that good with numbers. Subject of a podcast I listened to together with my girlfriend in the car. A math teacher at the University of Brussels, I believe, talking to Joël de Keulaar, a Dutch podcast host, who hosts the podcast The Insight, or Het Inzicht, which is basically a bunch of celebrities or random people, really, even just like regular old guys and girls come tell their story. And they come and tell what is their great insight to like what makes life easier or better that they learned from their job or from their life context, from their life experiences or from traumatic experience. For example, there was one person who is like a famous Dutch creator of commercials in commercial breaks to sell products and stuff, and he lost his son, I think, in a traumatic experience type of deal, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while since I've listened to it. And he talked about how connectedness and feeling connected to others and feeling the support of others is the only antidote you need in such situations. He showed that, or he realized that after, for example, receiving a whole bunch of dishes in the oven from people around them, as soon as that happened, as soon as their son died, and them, the plural, I'm talking about being him and his wife, and he realized then that really that connectedness, that's the thing that can fill the void that the death of our son can fill up the death of our son. The void that the death of our son left behind. That's what I was really looking for. Took a while to get there, but I got there in the end. And if you get there in the end, then it doesn't even matter how many tries you take. Even if you don't get there in the end, you can still take as many tries as you want. But either way, the podcast episode we listened to was with a woman named Anne. Was her first name. I can't really remember her last name. I think it was Dooms. Anne Dooms, professor of mathematics, who talked about how a lot of people have this kind of disgust when it comes to math, to mathematics. They feel like they are bad at it. They see it as like a characteristic of themselves, like, oh no, I'm bad at math. Sometimes people are even a bit proud of it, it seems like, according to her. And she's like, that's really sad because math has beauty in it. And also because she realizes that the way that we teach math to children is often not optimal. We teach them like very specific cases. We teach them very specific exercises and how they can get to the one specific solution of that specific exercise. But we pay way too less attention to the actual process of solving a math equation, solving a math question. And that actual process, according to Anne Dooms, math teacher who was a guest on the podcast, is that we learn a concept, we then make an abstract representation in our mind of that concept, we kind of zoom out, to then later, once we encounter an exercise that uses that concept, make it into something specific and concrete again. So her kind of plea if you will, was that we humans are all constantly thinking in mathematical ways because we are always measuring stuff. We are always making an abstraction of things. Even often when we use regular words, we are making abstractions of things. Like for example, when you call a random cat on the street just a cat. No, that's not just a cat, that's the cat that belongs to that person. And it's this breed and it's this color, but you just chaos eruption. Looks interesting. Goodbye, Poison Bolt. And you make the abstraction into it just being like a cat, you know? You kind of name the cat the category. Hahaha. Okay, yeah, got that last out of the way. Back to serious business. And in a way that is also thinking abstractly about the world. And we are constantly doing about it. Also, transitive reasoning is something that I learned in my thesis, and it's something that also comes up a lot. It's kind of this thing like, if A relates to B in a certain way, and B relates to C in a certain way, then you can most often determine the relationship between A and C, even though the information about their relationship is not explicitly stated. To give you a very easy example, it's like, if the car is parked next to the bus, if the car is parked to the left of the bus and the bus is parked to the left of the bicycle, you then know, alright, the car is parked to the left of the bicycle, even though there was nothing explicitly said about the relation between those two objects. Transitive reasoning allows you to kind of make your own conclusions, draw your own conclusions from limited information. Human reasoning is truly an amazing subject. It's an amazing capacity. It's what separates us from a bunch of other animal species, are higher reasoning capacities, like for example also planning, impulse control, all that good stuff. All stuff that people with attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder have a bit more struggle with, because they are the executive functions, as they are called. But either way, she talked about that math is being taught wrong, because for example also when math teachers give exercises, right? They give a test, the children make exercises. If the solution, the end solution is not right, what do they get to hear? Oh no, this is not correct, try again. Whereas there is way too less time, or there is nearly not enough time, that's a better expression, invested into like looking at the process the child used to get to his or her answer. Maybe there are some very creative and actually extremely smart elements in there, but no, what they learn is, oh, not the right solution? Alright, I need to try again. This was not good. And that kind of extrapolates into nothing about this was good, because I didn't reach the desired solution, right? And the process is disregarded completely. And Doms understands that regular old teachers just don't have the time to invest into every single child and make sure that every child knows where in the process they went wrong and how they can still fix it, or how they can maybe like make a little change in the way they solve an exercise to still reach the desired conclusion. But still, she thinks that there should be a bit more of an emphasis on the process, on showing your work, even though that's already something that, in my opinion, or in my feeling, when I was in elementary school and high school, they still already asked a lot, like show your work. And in my statistics exams in higher education, they also ask you to show your work. But even then, I realized that it's just such nitpicky bullshit, whereas they are not focused on whether you actually understand what you're doing at all, which should be way more important in my opinion. If you make rounding errors, for example, oh yeah, no, you don't get any points for this example, or for this exercise rather. I remember vividly that in my first year, my statistics class, the first year that we had statistics, that was my only exam I ever had to retake throughout my university career. And when I went to look at the exam, because you can always go look at the exam to see what you did wrong, I realized quickly that I was so close to having enough marks to actually pass the exam, but they didn't give me any marks on a certain exercise where you had to draw a graph, because I forgot to place little points at certain intervals of that graph. My graph, the figure was entirely correct. My answer to the question was correct. I just forgot those little points in the graph, and they therefore didn't give me any points on that exercise. And just that small thing, the professor realizing that is complete arbitrary bullshit and it doesn't matter at all, that could have saved me the entire summer. Because sure, I only had one exam that I had to retake, but if it's statistics, you spend a whole summer on statistics. It is known as like the one course in psychology that a lot of people actually fail at a bunch of times. It's also the course that causes some people to have to step out of the education, to quit even after like a year or 4 or 5 already. If you don't get through that first year of statistics, you are not allowed to get your degree, which is absolute, it's ape shit. It's absolutely crazy. The educational system in Belgium is just a big joke most of the time, but it's not funny, especially not when you're in the middle of it. Our Minister of Education, for example, in the middle of the COVID period, when every student was having a mental breakdown, no social contacts at all, we were locked up and having to sit behind our computer the entire day, what did he do? He made soup for one random student in the student city of Leuven. He made soup. Our Minister of Education, the government official in charge of the educational services and making sure that students are doing a-okay, he just made one bowl of soup, or like one casserole of soup. I'll give him that. It was a large quantity of soup, but that's just yuck. A lot of people hate him though. I dislike politicians in general, but for him, there's like a special place in hell. A special place in the part of my heart that hates other people. Look at the debuffs we're applying to enemies, man. These types of builds are really going crazy now with this Chaotic Inferno spell and with the Chaos Eruption spell as well. It was an interesting podcast. Listened to it together with my girlfriend in the car while we were on the way to the animal sanctuary, the animal graveyard, the animal funeral home. I think that's the best approach or the best words. Her cat recently passed away and she forgot to take the little basket she took her cat in. She forgot to take that back home with her. But that's why we had to drive there again. And I was like, you want to listen to a podcast for once instead of to the radio? And she thankfully said yes, because I think it was a nice experience. Even though she was like, yeah, I learned about this in class. About, for example, the impact of certain study methods in mathematics in elementary school and stuff. Because she is studying to become like an educator or somebody that helps raise people, somebody that also gives psychological caregiving to children and people that just need it, not only children. And either way, she has some classes about like learning, studying, learning disorders like dyslexia and dyscalculia. So she kind of didn't hear a lot of new stuff at the start, but sometimes hearing stuff that you already know can also be a very nice experience. I realize this whenever I go quizzing. Whenever I go to a quiz and they ask a question that you already know, you know the answer to. That's such a beautiful feeling. Also, when I'm studying my Anki flashcards and I'm trying to learn more about certain quiz questions, whenever I remember any of them, it's just this amazing feeling of satisfaction. Feeling of like wanting to pat your brain on the head a little second, like, good job, buddy. I knew you could do it. I knew you're still in there and you still have some capacity to learn new stuff. It's amazing that you remember it. For example, that the capital of Montenegro is Podgorica. Something that I remembered from studying on Anki on the quiz. And luckily we remembered it because one of my quizmates thought that we were talking about the country Macedonia. But I knew that it was Montenegro. We also had like another context clue to derive that answer. Macedonia was not correct, but still. I'm quite proud of myself for learning something and then actually remembering it, knowing about it. I think that's very, very nice. One of the best feelings. Kind of having the feeling that educating yourself actually worked, actually paid off. We have 2 more weapons to craft. We can next time craft the Arcane Scepter of Light and then we will have to head back into the final map again, because to craft this weapon, we still need a whole bunch of tin. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.